The grand ballroom shimmered under golden lights, filled with laughter, champagne, and the quiet arrogance of the wealthy. Waiters glided between tables, and a soft orchestra hummed in the background. Amid the glitz and chatter, Emma stood silently by the far corner, her hands folded nervously in front of her apron. She was a server, just another face in the background of a billionaire's charity gala. But tonight, fate had something far bigger planned for her. "Hey, Emma," one of the guests called out, his voice teasing, "I heard you can play the piano. Why don't you give us a little show?" Laughter rippled across the room. They didn't mean it seriously. It was a joke. She was a waitress, after all. The idea that she'd sit behind that gleaming white grand piano in her simple uniform was absurd to them. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. She shook her head shyly, but the crowd's curiosity had already been sparked. "Come on, don't be shy," another voice chimed in. "We could use a laugh." The billionaire host, Alexander Reed, sat silently at the head table, observing the scene. His reputation was one of power and precision, ruthless in business, reserved in emotion, yet something about the young woman's hesitant eyes caught his attention. There was a depth there, a quiet storm she was trying hard to hide. After a long pause, Emma nodded. "All right," she said softly, "just for a minute." The laughter died down as she walked toward the piano. Her heart pounded. It had been years since she last touched one, years since the day she'd lost her mother, the person who taught her how to play. The piano used to be her escape, her way of speaking when words failed. But after her mother's death, Emma never played again. Music had become too painful, too full of memories she wasn't ready to face. She sat down and let her fingers hover over the keys. The crowd waited, some smirking, others curious. The room fell into a hush. Then, with a trembling breath, Emma began to play. First, the notes were soft, hesitant, like a whisper of something fragile and lost. But slowly, the melody grew. It was haunting, emotional, a piece that carried sorrow, love, and hope all at once. The sound seemed to wrap around the room, touching every corner, every soul. Laughter turned to silence. Even the clinking glasses stopped. The melody swelled into something powerful, something that spoke of pain, of dreams shattered and rebuilt, of love that refused to die. Tears filled Emma's eyes, but she didn't stop. Her fingers danced, telling a story she'd never been able to speak aloud. When the final note faded into the air, the silence was deafening. Then, slowly, people began to stand, one by one, applauding, not out of politeness but out of awe. Emma's head hung low. She didn't look up until she heard the sound of someone walking toward her. It was Alexander Reed. His usually stern face was unreadable, but his eyes glistened with tears he hadn't expected to shed. "Where did you learn to play like that?" he asked quietly. Emma hesitated. "My mother taught me," she said, voice trembling, "before she passed away." He nodded, his throat tight. "It was extraordinary. You played like you've lived every note." That night changed everything. In the days that followed, Emma's performance spread through whispers among the city's elite. A billionaire's gala wasn't supposed to be emotional, but somehow, a waitress with a forgotten gift had reminded everyone what real beauty was. Alexander couldn't forget it either. He found himself thinking about her often, the way she'd poured her soul into that piano, how her music had cracked open something inside him he didn't even know was closed. A week later, he invited her to his office. Emma, still in disbelief, arrived nervously, unsure why a man like him would want to see her again. "I have a proposal," he said simply. "Not a job as a server. I want you to be the lead pianist for my foundation's charity program. You'll teach underprivileged kids like I once was, how to play." Tears welled up in her eyes. "You mean, you're serious?" He smiled faintly. "Music like yours shouldn't be hidden. It has the power to heal, and I think the world needs that." From that day forward, Emma's life transformed. She began teaching children who had nothing but dreams and curiosity. Through them, she found joy again. Through her, they found hope. And every time she played, she could feel her mother's presence, warm, proud, and eternal. As for Alexander, that one night reminded him that not everything could be bought or built. Some things, like emotion, passion, and healing, could only be felt. And it was that same night, watching a waitress play the piano with trembling hands, that taught him what true wealth really meant. Years later, Emma performed again, this time on the grandest stage, surrounded by children she had taught. And sitting in the front row, with quiet pride in his eyes, was Alexander. The same melody filled the air, but this time it wasn't born from grief, it was born from gratitude. The music that once carried pain now carried hope. And when the final note faded, the audience rose to their feet, clapping and crying. Among them, the billionaire who once had everything, except emotion, wiped a tear from his eye, because that night, a woman who was once the joke of the room reminded everyone of something simple yet profound.